I've heard about Marry Me chicken before, but I don't think I've ever had it in my life. So if I have, I don't remember it, so maybe it isn't that great, but this actually was pretty good. So I'm going to put some flour down and season it so that we can dredge our chicken in that and get that cooking and browning in a pan. So I add some salt and pepper to this flour, and then I add 2 tablespoons of butter and some avocado oil to my pan. And you can't see it in my shot, but I did turn my pan on to get that nice and warm for my chicken to brown. You don't want to use a non-stick pan for this. You want to use something like I am today. I'm using my enameled cast iron because you want to build flavor. You do want things to stick in your pan so that you can deglaze them and have that flavor in your food. So I'm just going to trim any pieces of fat or gristle off of my chicken. And one of these packs of chicken, the chicken breast, was very thick, so I just butterflied this open. You could use chicken cutlets from the grocery store or a thin sliced chicken breast, and that's basically what I'm making here. So you just take your knife and run it right through the middle of the chicken, and then I take the heel of my palm and I just kind of pound it down a little bit to make it as thin as possible. Then I mix my seasonings into my flour, and then I just get this chicken coated in that really well. As you can see, these other pieces of chicken aren't really that thick, so I just left them as they were, but you can also butterfly little small pieces or cut them into smaller strips if you have more people to feed. So you want to make sure this pan is pretty hot on medium-high heat, and just make sure your oil and butter is melted and is bubbling a little bit. So you just want to sear your chicken on both sides and get a nice brown crust. You don't want to worry about cooking it all the way through here. As thin as your chicken is, it should get pretty close, but we will finish the cooking in the sauce that we're going to make. So after you brown your chicken, you're just going to put it on a separate plate outside of your pan so that you can work on building flavor. So as you can see, the chicken left some stuff in the bottom of the pan, and that's what we want. So I add just a little bit more avocado oil here because my chicken cooking it kind of soaked it up. And I am going to cook my second batch of chicken. So I just put the other 2 pieces in here. You want to make sure that there's enough oil so that you can get a nice brown crust on them when you're cooking them. If you're making several batches, you also want to make sure that you are building flavor and not burning anything. So just keep this on a medium heat and not too high so that you don't burn this flavor that you're making in the bottom of your pan. So now we're going to add some chopped garlic. I just add a handful. I didn't even count them. You just add as much garlic as you like. We like garlic around here, and we think that it's delicious and has great health benefits. So I'm just going to chop my garlic into a small dice and add it to this pan. You don't want to cook your garlic, you just want to get it nice and soft and get the aromas coming out of the garlic so that it infuses your oil a little bit. And again, we're just continuing to build flavor in this pan. So next I'm going to deglaze my pan, and that's getting up all of this dark bits in the bottom of the pan that we created from cooking our chicken. So I'm just going to add a full quart of homemade chicken stock here, and I'm only going to add half of it at first so I don't make a mess, because I'm one to make a mess. And I just take the edge of my spoon and I just scrape all of that up so that we retain that flavor in our sauce, and this is what makes this so delicious. So I actually did double this sauce recipe because I do have boys that I'm feeding here, and we wanted to serve this over noodles, and so I just felt like doubling this sauce would be the best. So here I'm putting I think a cup of cream into this sauce. And then I take just a little bit of water to make sure I get all of the cream out of this jar. I probably shouldn't have put the cream in the jar because a lot of it got left in the jar. So here you have your sauce and the base of it. I'm going to add something that was not in the recipe, and I've never used this before, but this is the Boursin cheese. I don't know if I'm saying that right. And I think this was like the chive and something else, chive and herb flavor, and I just thought that would be really good in this. I was going to make that viral dish that you put the Boursin cheese in the middle of a dish with tomatoes and garlic and all kinds of other things and bake it and make a sauce out of it, but I don't have any garden fresh tomatoes anymore, so that ship has sailed, so I decided I needed to use this cheese up. Before I added this Parmesan cheese, I should have taken a whisk and whisked this Boursin cheese in a little bit more, but I didn't do that. So don't do what I did, whisk that cheese in if you use it. So then I just added a whole package of Parmesan cheese, and then I added about a half of a teaspoon of red pepper flake, but I ended up coming in and making that a full teaspoon because we like a little bit of spice here now that my kids are older. But if you have young kids that don't like spice, I would either leave this out or just put a little bit. It did give it very good flavor. So like I said, at this point I should have whisked all this together, but I didn't. And then I use my method of using sourdough discard to thicken this up a little bit, and I let this not boil, but I let this kind of simmer on the stove for a little bit with the chicken in it, and that also helped thicken this sauce up. So then you want to add your sun-dried tomatoes, and I made these sun-dried tomatoes homemade. And I made them last year and put them on my pantry shelf, and I never used them because I didn't know what to use them in, and I actually didn't even try them, so I didn't know how they turned out. So I used little cherry tomatoes and I put them into my dehydrator for, I believe it was 24 or 48 hours until they were completely dry and dehydrated. They look like kind of like little raisins. But after you do that, you just put them in a bottle with some oil and you just put it on your shelf and let that sit there together. And this, I thought, was not that great because when I tried to cut these up, they were like rubber, and I was like, oh no, these are not going to work in this dish. No one's going to want to marry me. But I'm just joking, I'm already married. But I thought that I was ruining this, but this sitting and simmering in this sauce softened these tomatoes up, and they gave the best depth of flavor. So obviously they sell sun-dried tomatoes at the grocery store, and you can use those as well. But I will be making this again, and as you can see in my jar, I probably have enough homemade sun-dried tomatoes to make this 2 more times, and next year I will plant cherry tomatoes just for sun-dried tomatoes because these were so good, and I'm so glad that I decided to go ahead and use them. So then you just place your chicken in this sauce and let this simmer for a while and let the chicken get nice and tender. And this is what ensures that your chicken is cooked all the way through, simmering in this sauce. So I simmered this in the sauce for probably 15 or 20 more minutes while I made my pasta. So I had my big pot of pasta water on, and I found these rigatonis at Aldi. I always like to get the special things every now and again if I see them that are a little bit different than kind of the more, cheaper types of box pasta that you might see. Here you can see I'm simmering the chicken and I'm trying to boil my pasta. It's not actually boiling really well right there, but I think the package said 10 to 12 minutes, so it was all finished, and I left this a little bit al dente, and I'm going to drain it out here in the sink. And then this is all ready to be plated up. This was so good. I really enjoyed this meal. And like I said, I'm definitely going to make this again. I can't believe I have never had it before. So as you can see, the sauce is just a little bit thin, but it does thicken up as it cools. And I just put the sauce all over the noodles, and you want to make sure you get those little pieces of sun-dried tomatoes in there, because that to me was like the best part. And then you put a chicken cutlet on the top and it's ready to go. I forgot to ask my husband if he'd marry me again after making this, but he did say it was pretty delicious.